If your blood pressure reading at home does not match what you got at the doctor's office, you are not imagining it, and you are not alone. Studies show that the way most people measure their blood pressure at home introduces errors large enough to completely change the picture of what is actually going on inside your body. We are talking about errors that can swing a reading by 10, 20, even 30 points in either direction. That is the difference between a normal reading and a reading that would normally prompt a serious conversation about medication. And the scary part is that most of these mistakes are things people do every single day without any idea they are doing anything wrong. If you are tracking your blood pressure at home, which is one of the smartest things you can do for your long-term health, you need your numbers to actually be accurate, because an inaccurate number is worse than no number at all. It can cause unnecessary panic over a reading that was never really that high, or just as dangerously, false reassurance when something is actually wrong and needs attention. So in this video, we are going through 10 of the most common mistakes people make when measuring their blood pressure at home, the research behind why each one matters, exactly how much error it introduces, and exactly what to do instead. By the end, you will know how to get a reading you can actually trust every single time. Mistake number 1, talking during the measurement. This sounds almost too simple to matter, but the research is clear and consistent on this one. Talking during a blood pressure reading activates the same physiological systems involved in stress and physical exertion, even if the conversation itself is calm, friendly, and seemingly relaxed. The simple act of forming words and speaking requires coordinated activity from your respiratory muscles, your diaphragm, and parts of your nervous system that are tied directly into cardiovascular regulation. That activity alone is enough to raise blood pressure measurably. Studies looking specifically at this have found that talking during a reading can raise systolic blood pressure by 10 to 15 points or more. And in some cases, the effect has been measured even higher, depending on how animated or stressful the conversation is. This includes talking on the phone, chatting with whoever happens to be in the room, answering questions from a nurse or family member taking your blood pressure, or even just casually narrating how your day has been going while the cuff inflates. The fix is straightforward, but requires actual discipline. Sit in complete silence for the full duration of the measurement, from the moment the cuff starts inflating until it is fully released. No talking, no answering questions, no texting, no scrolling on your phone, and ideally no television or radio competing for your attention in the background. If you take your blood pressure with a partner or caregiver present, let them know in advance that you need quiet and ask them to hold off any conversation until the reading is complete. This is one of the easiest mistakes to fix and one of the most impactful, because the error it introduces is large, and entirely avoidable. Mistake number 2, not resting before the measurement. Your blood pressure does not instantly settle the moment you sit down in a chair. It takes a genuine period of time for your cardiovascular system to come down from whatever activity you were just doing, whether that was walking in from the car, climbing a flight of stairs, carrying groceries, doing housework, or even just rushing around trying to get the measurement done before you have to leave for an appointment. Clinical guidelines from major cardiology and hypertension organizations consistently recommend sitting quietly, without talking and without distraction, for a full 5 minutes before taking a reading. 5 minutes feels like a long time when you're eager to just get the number and move on with your day. And this is exactly why it is one of the most commonly skipped steps. But skipping it is also one of the most common reasons home readings come back artificially elevated, sometimes significantly so. Depending on what you were doing immediately beforehand, skipping the rest period can inflate your reading by 10 points or more. The fix is to build that 5 minutes into your routine as a non-negotiable part of the process every single time you measure. Sit down in a comfortable chair with back support. Place your feet flat on the floor. Breathe normally and naturally, and let your body genuinely settle before you take the reading. Set a timer if that helps you stick to the full 5 minutes rather than guessing. This single change, done consistently, removes one of the largest and most preventable sources of inflated readings. Mistake number 3, using the wrong cuff size. This is one of the most underappreciated sources of measurement error in home blood pressure monitoring, and it is shockingly common. Blood pressure cuffs are not one size fits all, despite the fact that most basic home monitors are sold with a single standard cuff included in the box. Using a cuff that is too small for your arm will produce a falsely elevated reading, and the degree of error can be substantial. The physics behind this is straightforward once you understand it. A blood pressure cuff works by inflating around your arm until it fully compresses the brachial artery and then slowly releasing pressure while the device or the listener detects the point at which blood flow resumes. If the cuff is too small for the circumference of your arm, it requires more pressure to fully compress the artery than would actually be needed with a properly sized cuff, simply because the cuff cannot wrap around and apply force evenly. The device, or the person taking the reading, registers that higher pressure as your blood pressure, when in reality it is an artifact of an ill-fitting cuff. Research has shown that using an undersized cuff can inflate systolic readings by 10 points or more, and in some studies on people with larger arm circumferences, the error has been measured considerably higher than that. This is a particularly widespread problem because the cuffs that ship with the most commonly purchased home monitors are sized for an average adult arm, which does not account for the very wide range of arm sizes that exist in the real population. The fix requires a few extra minutes the first time you set up your monitor, but it only needs to be done once. Take a soft tape measure and measure the circumference of your upper arm at the midpoint between your shoulder and your elbow, with your arm relaxed at your side. Then, check that measurement against the sizing chart provided with your specific cuff, which is usually printed directly on the cuff itself or included in the monitor's instructions. If your arm circumference falls outside the range listed for the cuff you have, you need a different size. Most major manufacturers sell cuffs in small, standard, and large sizes, specifically because they understand this is a common and significant source of error. It is a worthwhile investment to get the correctly sized cuff for your arm rather than relying on whatever happened to come in the box. Mistake number 4, positioning the cuff over clothing or a rolled-up sleeve. Taking a reading with the cuff placed directly over a shirt sleeve or with your sleeve rolled up so tightly that it is bunching and constricting around your upper arm both introduce significant and unpredictable inaccuracy into your reading. When a cuff is placed over clothing, the fabric interferes with how the cuff transmits pressure to your arm and can also interfere with the sensors or the sounds that the device or listener relies on to detect your blood pressure. Depending on the thickness, type, and bunching of the fabric, this can throw readings off by anywhere from 5 to 50 points, which is an enormous range of potential error that makes the reading essentially meaningless as a precise measurement. A tightly rolled up sleeve creates a different but equally serious problem. When fabric is rolled and bunched above the cuff, it can act somewhat like a tourniquet, partially restricting venous blood flow in the arm. This changes the pressure dynamics in ways that can distort the reading in either direction, and it also makes the reading less comfortable and less reliable overall. The fix is simple to describe, even if it occasionally feels inconvenient. Take the measurement directly on bare skin, with your sleeve fully removed rather than rolled up. If you typically wear long sleeves, plan for this by wearing something that is easy to remove from one arm, or take your measurement before getting fully dressed for the day. This small adjustment and routine removes a source of error that can otherwise be very large and very unpredictable. Mistake number 5. Having your arm in the wrong position. The position of your arm during the measurement matters far more than most people realize, and it is one of the most frequently overlooked technical details of accurate home monitoring. For an accurate reading, your arm needs to be properly supported, resting comfortably on a table, desk, or armrest, with the cuff positioned at roughly the same height as your heart. This positioning matters because blood pressure readings are affected by the vertical distance between the measurement site and your heart. Due to the basic physics of how blood pressure changes with height in a column of fluid moving through your circulatory system. If your arm is hanging unsupported at your side during the measurement, the muscular effort required to hold it in that position, even passively, can raise your reading. And if your arm is positioned significantly above heart level, such as resting on a high countertop, the reading can be artificially lowered. If your arm is positioned significantly below heart level, such as hanging down at your side or resting on your lap while you sit in a low chair, the reading can be artificially raised, sometimes substantially. The fix is to rest your arm on a flat, stable surface like a table or a desk, adjusted so that the cuff sits at approximately the same height as the middle of your chest, which approximates heart level for most body positions. Keep your arm relaxed rather than tensed, and avoid holding it up yourself or letting it dangle unsupported. If you do not have a table at the right height available, a few firm pillows on your lap can provide the support and elevation needed to get your arm to heart level while sitting in a normal chair. Mistake number 6, crossing your legs. This is a small detail that produces a surprisingly large and consistent effect across multiple studies. Crossing your legs during a blood pressure measurement has been shown to raise systolic blood pressure by several points compared to sitting with both feet flat on the floor. The exact mechanism is not entirely settled in the research, but it appears to relate to a combination of increased muscular tension throughout the legs and lower body, along with changes in venous blood flow dynamics that occur when one leg is compressing the other. Even though crossing your legs feels like a completely relaxed and natural sitting position to most people, physiologically, it introduces a measurable cardiovascular effect. The fix is to sit with both feet flat on the floor, uncrossed, with your legs relaxed and slightly apart for the entire duration of the measurement, from the moment you begin your 5-minute rest period through to the completion of the reading itself. This is an easy habit to build once you are aware of it, and it removes another small but real source of inflated readings. Mistake number 7, having a full bladder during the measurement. This is the mistake that surprises almost everyone the first time they hear about it, but the evidence behind it is consistent and well established. Research has found that having a full bladder during a blood pressure reading can raise systolic blood pressure by around 10 points, and diastolic blood pressure by several points as well, which is a substantial and clinically meaningful effect from something that has nothing to do with your cardiovascular system on the surface. The mechanism behind this involves the body's physiological response to bladder distension. As the bladder fills and stretches, it activates the sympathetic nervous system, which is the same system responsible for the broader fight-or-flight stress response throughout your body. That activation increases heart rate, constricts blood vessels to some degree, and raises blood pressure as part of a coordinated physiological reaction, even though you may not consciously feel any significant urgency or discomfort. The fix is simple and should become an automatic part of your routine. Use the bathroom before sitting down to begin your rest period and measurement. Make this the very first step in your blood pressure routine before you even sit in the chair, so that bladder fullness is never a hidden variable distorting your numbers. Mistake number 8, measuring right after caffeine, exercise, or smoking. Each of these activities causes a genuine and measurable temporary spike in blood pressure that does not reflect your actual baseline or resting blood pressure, and measuring during that spike gives you a number that is technically accurate in the moment, but misleading as a representation of your overall cardiovascular health. Caffeine can elevate blood pressure for 30 minutes or longer after consumption, with the effect being particularly pronounced in people who do not consume caffeine regularly and have not built up any tolerance to its stimulant effects. A cup of coffee right before your morning reading can meaningfully distort the number you record. Exercise, including relatively light or moderate exercise, raises blood pressure during the activity itself as a completely normal and healthy physiological response, and it can take 20 to 30 minutes or more for blood pressure to return fully to your resting baseline afterward. Taking a reading immediately after a walk or any physical activity captures your exercising or recovering blood pressure, not your resting blood pressure, and the two numbers can be meaningfully different. Smoking causes an acute spike in blood pressure due to the stimulant and vasoconstrictive effects of nicotine, and this effect can persist for a meaningful period after smoking a cigarette. The fix is to avoid caffeine, exercise, and smoking for at least 30 minutes before taking a measurement so that the number you are recording genuinely reflects your resting baseline blood pressure rather than a temporary activity-induced spike. If you have your morning coffee as part of your routine, take your blood pressure reading first, before the coffee, to keep your tracking consistent and accurate. Mistake number 9, only taking one reading. Blood pressure naturally fluctuates from one heartbeat to the next and from 1 minute to the next, even in a person who is sitting calmly and has corrected every other mistake on this list. This natural variability is a normal feature of how the cardiovascular system works. but it means that any single reading is essentially a snapshot that can be influenced by momentary factors that have nothing to do with your overall blood pressure pattern. Clinical guidelines from major health organizations recommend taking 2 to 3 separate readings, spaced approximately 1 minute apart, and then using the average of those readings rather than relying on any single number in isolation. This approach dramatically improves the reliability and the usefulness of your result, because it smooths out the natural minute-to-minute variability that exists in every single person, and it reduces the chance that one unusually high or unusually low reading distorts your understanding of where your blood pressure actually sits. The fix is to build this into your routine as a standard habit rather than an occasional extra step you only do when a number looks surprising. Take 2 or 3 readings, allowing roughly 1 minute to pass between each one, and either average them yourself or use a monitor that has an automatic averaging feature built in. Record the average, not just the first number that appears on the screen. Mistake number 10. Measuring at inconsistent times without tracking the pattern. Blood pressure follows a natural daily rhythm that researchers refer to as a circadian pattern. It tends to be at its lowest during sleep, rises in the morning as your body wakes up and becomes active, and then fluctuates throughout the day in response to meals, physical activity, stress, and other everyday factors. This is a completely normal pattern that exists in virtually everyone. If you measure your blood pressure at a different, essentially random time every day, sometimes first thing in the morning, sometimes in the middle of the afternoon, sometimes right before bed, you are not building a coherent picture of your actual blood pressure pattern over time. You are instead collecting a series of disconnected snapshots taken at different points along your natural daily rhythm, which makes the numbers difficult to interpret meaningfully and difficult to compare from one day to the next. The fix is to measure at consistent times each day, ideally once in the morning before eating breakfast or taking any medication, and once again in the evening, and to keep a simple written or digital log of these readings over time, including the date and time of each measurement. A consistent pattern measured the same way at the same times every day gives you, and anyone helping you, interpret your numbers, a vastly more useful and far more accurate picture of your actual blood pressure trend than scattered, randomly timed readings ever could provide. Putting it all together, here is how to combine everything in this video into a single, repeatable routine you can actually follow every time you measure your blood pressure. Use the bathroom first before anything else. Sit quietly for a full 5 minutes with no talking, no phone, and no distractions, with both feet flat on the floor and uncrossed. Rest your arm on a table or supported surface at heart level, with the properly sized cuff placed directly on bare skin, not over clothing and not under a rolled-up sleeve. Avoid caffeine, exercise, and smoking for at least 30 minutes beforehand. Take 2 to 3 readings, spaced about 1 minute apart, and record the average rather than a single number. And take your measurements at the same consistent times each day so that you are building a real, trackable pattern over time rather than a collection of unrelated snapshots. Getting an accurate picture of your blood pressure is one of the most valuable things you can track for your long-term cardiovascular health, but only if the numbers you're collecting are genuinely reliable. Most people are unknowingly sabotaging their own readings in several of the ways covered in this video, sometimes every single time they measure. Now you know exactly what those mistakes are and exactly how to correct each one. Stay consistent, and we will see you in the next one.